We have a few more minutes. We have to get back to our filmmaking here, but let's, does anybody else have any more questions?
I got a hard question. The Cove, no notes. The Game Changers, I have one issue.
What is that?
The mention of 15% of emissions attributed to animal agriculture.
Oh, you think it's more?
This guy thinks that there's more.
There might be. Just tell me the rest of what you're thinking, and I'll tell you how we came up with that number.
Dr. Rao and I have approached James Cameron's organization, Plant Powered Taskforce, and challenged them on this issue because they still, to this day, I'm looking at the webpage, it says animal agriculture contributes 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And in the Game Changers, it says about 15%. So I'm thinking this is the figure that they're referring to. But this is science that's been stalled, and there's a lot of evidence that we should be using different parameters. And even the IPCC says that we have to stop using the carbon counting methods that we're just fallen into the habit of. The global warming potential measured over 100 years doesn't correctly measure methane, and agriculture is the biggest source of methane. But I'll let Dr. Rao talk about it. That's been his specialty and his passion for many years now.
No, it's okay. I'll send Louie my paper, but Louie, I want to hear how you came up with that number. I think that's an interesting story.
I mean, there's Cowspiracy. They talk about 50 or 51% of the greenhouse gases. They got a lot of flack from that because of the way that they measured it. And it fluctuates from, less than 12% to over 50%. So James Cameron and his group wanted to figure out, let's get a independent scientific body to analyze the data on, the rigorous methods that they use for everything else. So they went to Chatham House in London, and they had a group of scientists crunch the numbers. So we used the Chatham House numbers. And that's just so the environmental movement could be on the same page. There's a lot of ways to parse this out, right? Any landfill in the world that's seeping out a lot of methane, and part of that's with vegetables too. So it's hard to do apples to apples or apples to burgers and make these numbers. But so we just used Chatham House because they wanted to be able to get the numbers so that people that are in the movement have validated speaking points. And 14.5 seemed to be validated. So you have to go into the way that Chatham House does it. But they seem pretty rigorous when I looked at it. Even if it's 50%, do you think that's going to sway anybody or more people? Maybe slightly more, but 14.5 is still a lot. And I look at, okay, what about freshwater pollution? There's 400,000 gallons of fresh water that are wasted every year. 3.5 tons more of carbon dioxide go into the atmosphere with a meat eater than a plant-based eater. Working on this project with the UN that they computed that every ton of carbon dioxide that's consumed translates to 3 cubic meters of ice melting in the Arctic. That means that there's about 10 cubic meters of ice melting for every meat eater out there compared to a plant eater. That's pretty huge. So think of a whole population of the ice that you could save if people were vegan, right? I'd like to see it, but is that going to really be enough? For some more interesting data, I don't think this paper is being shared, but less than 10% of the population is going to be swayed by animal rights or environmental arguments. Mm-hmm. Imagine that 93% of what you're saying is not going to be heard. Do you want to just reach the environmental people or the animal rights people, or do you want to reach this big swath of people that don't care about any of it? Right. They're just doing their life. They're doing the same thing. They're in remote control, and they're not going to be swayed by animals dying. They're not going to be swayed. I mean, this is horrible, but they're not going to be swayed by environmental stuff. They'll just think that's a left-wing conspiracy or inaccurate data. But, if that same person is sitting on a couch eating burger with diabetes or heart disease, the best way to talk to them might be, there's a study that Dean Ornish did 42 years ago that showed that you can actually reverse heart disease. You don't need that medication that makes you feel lethargic and makes you want to sit in the couch and make you not want to do anything. That cholesterol reducing medicine, you might be able to get rid of it because they proved that, a plant-based diet is the best way to do it.
Well, Louie, you already proved that what everybody cares about is erectile dysfunction.
If people haven't seen The Game Changers, there's one scene in the movie that we did where we showed there's a device called a Rigiscan. It's basically a computer that gets strapped on a male leg, has 2 diodes that go up to the penis, one on the base and one on the head, and it shows nocturnal erections. And a guy will have about 6 to 7 normal nocturnal erections, not having to do with sexual thoughts or dreams, just blood keep going to an important part of the male anatomy. we knew that erectile dysfunction is an early warning sign for heart disease. And heart disease starts in America with men at 5 years old now. They can see signs of it developing from cholesterol and animal-based products. We put this device onto 3 normal, healthy, athletic team sports playing men down in Southern California. And we sent them to bed after a plant-based diet and a meat-based diet. On average, I think they had a 10.4% bigger, harder erection after one meal, 350% longer duration erection after a plant-based diet. So a lot of people, that was like a 4-minute scene in the film. It was probably the mic drop moment in the movie. We didn't have to do the rest of the movie. That 4 minutes was probably the most powerful bits. You could see, like, if you go to the theater, when you could go to theaters, you could see like the women nudging the guys, and, you know, it's like, it's kind of joke about it, but it's not a joke. I think there's over 40% of American men have trouble with erectile dysfunction. You know, Alzheimer's is one of these diseases that it slowly erases what it means to be human. You lose your memory and you lose everything. But anyway, I should probably get back out there and get to the filmmaking. But thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. You are awesome.
Oh,
as
I
always.
appreciate it, Sailesh. Well, pleasure. Thanks for everything that you're doing. Appreciate it, everybody. All right. Cheers now. Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.